If you've watched the last part of the gripping series on restoring my Craftsman/Parks planer, you'll no doubt remember that when you last saw the disassembled bits and pieces of the planer motor, I'd cleaned off the majority of the collected dust, done some basic inspections, and concluded that the motor was probably salvageable. Off camera, I took a wire wheel and a Scotch-Brite pad to most of the major motor components and got rid of all of the surface rust and the last vestiges of greasy schmoo that was covering everything. After wiping everything down with mineral spirits, I primed and painted the exterior surfaces a cheery machine gray color, because gray is the color that simultaneously screams modest and open-minded. As the poet Usher once said, "We want a lady in the street, but a freak in the bed." The old motor brushes were beyond salvaging. I had zero success finding a source for the exact size and lead configuration, except for a couple of custom brush manufacturers that wanted a fair bit of money for a special order. What I was able to find were the correct thickness and length, but were wider than what I needed, a problem that has similarly plagued all of the ladies in my life. Gotta love eBay. I've never filed carbon brushes to size, but I figured I'd give it a shot. The original bearings were pretty crusty. It might have been possible to pry off the shields, clean and re-grease them, but once again, eBay provided a source for new, original stock bearings that were an exact match. When I received the box in the mail, the seller said they were trying to close out their inventory and threw in a third bearing as a free bonus, which I thought was pretty nice of them. Filing the brushes to size ended up being a lot simpler than I expected. I guess I could have built some kind of a jig that would keep the brush parallel to the surface of the file, but I only had 4 of them to do. Instead, I just took regular measurements of the front and back of the brush and adjusted my grip to make small adjustments as I went along. Once I hit my target size, I filed a small chamfer on the edges to match the profile of the original brushes. A quick test in the brush holder, and everything fit encouragingly well. Next up was to assemble the motor's armature. As luck would have it, the bell end of a piece of PVC pipe fit the shaft and matched the inner race of the bearing, so I used it to drive one of the bearings onto the motor shaft. On the other side of the shaft, which was quite a bit shorter, I was able to use a large socket to install that bearing. With the armature together, I could go on and do the rest of the motor. probably won't be able to see this on camera, but the brush holder retaining ring is stamped with the letters CW and CCW. I'm assuming that means clockwise and counterclockwise. I'm guessing that a small shift in the position of the brush holder will change the motor's rotation rather than a change in the wiring. It's the first time I've come across this particular type of arrangement. Getting the bearings seated in the motor's end bells proved a little challenging. A dead blow hammer helped a lot, along with the skills that I got from the one yoga class that I took years ago. After I got the retaining bolts lined up through the motor, I got everything snugged down solidly. There was a small end cap seal on the brush side of the motor. I just tapped it in with a hammer and then followed up with the brush cover itself. Overall, assembly was pretty painless, and it certainly looks a lot better than it used to. Alright, got it all wired up. I spared you the boredom of having to watch that. Got it tied down to the table. Wired into one of the 220 lines here in the garage. And we're gonna try it and see what happens. I'm gonna be actuating this from a breaker. direction. Brushes are looking good, no arcing. I let the motor run for about 10 minutes or so, bring it up to operating temperature. She's running like a champ.